Welcome back to Upside Down Data. We need to talk about Bitcoin and crypto in general and where it's heading next. So it's an understatement to say that a lot has been happening with crypto over the last few days. So today, Bitcoin put in a new all-time high, 109K. But of course, the big events that have transpired was the launching of the Trump meme coin and then the subsequent launch of the MELANIA meme coin. So in this video, I want to take a data-driven perspective to what's going on and where we're heading next. If you've been following the channel, you know I always take a data-driven perspective grounded in the data. So I will give my thoughts and views about what's going on with these meme coins, but I'm going to come back at the end of the day to the data because ultimately that's what matters. My opinions, emotions, narratives, they're not what matters. It's the data. The market's going to do what it's going to do. I prefer to react to what the data is saying about where the market's heading rather than emotions and narratives that are talked about. So obviously, if you are not aware, although I'm sure most of you are, Trump launched a meme coin back on Friday that did exceptionally well in terms of its growth. It exploded. I think it got up to somewhere around the 16th largest asset by market cap, maybe even higher. I don't remember exactly how high it was at the top. But then we got this big collapse, and that happened because MELANIA also launched a meme coin. Now, there's debate of whether or not it was actually her or just someone else. I haven't seen the newest of exactly who might have been behind it. But it is an official one. It's coming, if not from her directly, from the Trump family in one way or the other. And so when that happened, a lot of liquidity just drained right out of the Trump meme coin, went over here. But then also what happened is people realized, oh, wait a minute. It's possible that the Trump family is not done with just the Trump coin or the MELANIA coin. There might be now coins for every single member of the family, means massive dilution is coming. And what it also did is raise a lot of ethical and frankly moral discussions. That with the Trump launch, a lot of people were not happy but willing to look the other way and saying, oh, this is actually a bullish sign, suggest that Trump is embracing crypto, all this and that. Really, when the MELANIA coin launched, where people changed to was, oh, okay, this is a pretty obvious money grab. This is just a way to try to extract a bunch of money out of the space. And frankly, they couldn't even wait for a week to do this. It was just 2 days later that this ended up happening. And so when you look at this, it's hard to feel like this is a good look for crypto, in my opinion. Now, you might have a different take, and I'd love to hear it in the comments. But in my opinion, it's hard to look at this as a good look for crypto. When you have the incoming president of the United States launching what seems to be a money grab, especially given what happened where they then launched the MELANIA coin, it seems like profiting off of just their status and fame and all those kinds of things, and not really doing anything that benefits the broader society. It really seems to be pretty self-centered. And the reason why this concerns me in kind of a broader narrative perspective is we know that crypto is a thing that's not universally adopted by any means in the United States. So this is a Pew Research survey. Now, the exact number you'll see will vary based on survey. This one had it only at about 17% of US adults that have ever invested in crypto. Some will have it higher, some as high as I think I've seen 40%. But no matter which one you look at, it's pretty clear that it's the minority. It is not the majority of US adults that have ever interacted with crypto, let alone still own it. And the thing that really concerns me looking at this poll, now this is back from October, so things might be a little bit different today, but at least at the point of that poll, you still had a pretty strong majority of Americans who didn't feel very confident in crypto. They didn't feel like it was reliable, safe, or a good investment. So generally not positive attitudes. And in fact, a full 30% at the very lowest here, saying it's not at all safe or reliable. It's hard for me to see personally how the launch of these meme coins by the Trump family changes the views of anyone who was already in this camp, who already was skeptical or maybe didn't like crypto. I don't see this as being a thing that makes them suddenly say, oh yeah, I want to invest in crypto now. Now, you might say, who cares what they think? We don't care about them. You know, forget about them. We're just going to move on. Well, the problem with that is that if we want crypto to really grow and really to get widespread adoption, eventually you need to convert these people. Now, obviously, with things like the internet, it went through a similar story. There were a lot of people who were skeptical, didn't think it made any sense. There were certainly plenty of scams that happened through the internet, so on and so forth. Eventually, people came around and got usage. But certainly, what you don't want to do is just have any unforced errors, any unforced stumbles or fumbles that make it harder or take longer for us to finally get to that point. And it's hard for me to not see this as an unnecessary fumble or error, certainly something that you would prefer not to have happened, in my view, if you really are focused on trying to get that widespread adoption of crypto. Now, again, this is my opinion. If you have different views, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And as I said up front, ultimately what I'm saying right now doesn't matter for what the market's going to do. I did just want to share my view and my opinions and why this makes me concerned from that more narrative perspective. But ultimately, that narrative is not what the market is necessarily going to care about. We already put an all-time high today after all this happened the last couple days, suggesting that the market's already shrugging that off, at least for Bitcoin, and is potentially moving on. And altcoins might do the same thing. There's the kind of a risk of being a mid-curver. You know, there's that meme where you're kind of on the low end of the IQ curve or on the high end of the distribution, and you just say, number go up, everything's good. In the mid-curve, you're saying, oh, but it looks bad. It's all this concern for narrative, emotion, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. And that's why, ultimately, where I'm going to come back to, and will continue to come back to, is the data. That ultimately, no matter how I personally feel about what happened over the last couple of days, it doesn't matter, and it will not influence my views about whether or not I'm bullish or bearish on the market. That is what, in my view, it means to be data-driven. You can have plenty of emotions, and frankly, you should have opinions and beliefs about what's going on in the market. But at the end of the day, that should not be what guides your decisions when it comes to the market. It should be the data. And when I look at the data right now, it's actually telling a pretty good story, which is why I remain bullish. So though I'm not a fan of this, though I'm not happy that all this happened, I still remain bullish because the data is still looking decent. We have cooled off on risk. That's what I'm showing you here, the Bitcoin long-term risk that had gotten relatively elevated at 108K before. We have cooled off notably, means we have more room to work with. We have not gotten up to these really high risk levels that have marked cycle tops or near cycle tops in the past. That means that we still have more room to work with. We probably have another run potentially in us, could be quite explosive, frankly, to get to whatever the cycle top will ultimately be. That ceiling is now higher than it was if we just gone straight there from 108K. That's a good sign in my view. And we also see that if we're thinking about, are we still in a bull market or bear market, our models are also saying still bullish, still in a bull market. This is our market cycle model. And what it does is very quickly identify when you're entering into a bear market, and then when you're entering into a bull market, entering into the new bear market, so on and so forth. When you're transitioning out of bull markets into bear markets, it's very quick to identify. In some ways, this has been a cheat code to the Bitcoin market. And this is one of the reasons why I got so incredibly bullish back here in early 2023, why I was just saying this was the blindly buy Bitcoin phase of the cycle, because we saw this flip bullish, and off to the races we have gone. And the good news is that we remain bullish here. Price remains well above the critical level, still good signs. So when I look at these things together, we have plenty of more room to work with this cycle. We're still in a bull market. Why would I be flipping bearish now? Despite the fact that I'm not a fan of what happened the last couple of days, doesn't matter. The data are still bullish, therefore I am still bullish. And one other thing that I think bears mentioning is that no matter what's been going on over the last few days, this doesn't mean that Bitcoin or crypto itself has changed in what it's trying to do. Just because Trump launched Trump coin and just because MELANIA coin was launched does not mean that Bitcoin itself has become different or any less than it was before in terms of what it's trying to accomplish. That's one of the things that we basically have to deal with a permissionless system like crypto. Different people can use it in whatever ways they want. And ultimately, it's up to the market to decide what it's going to reward and what it won't. So I do just want to mention that this does not change at all my view about crypto or Bitcoin in general. There are different use cases of Bitcoin and crypto that I agree with more than others, but ultimately as the underlying technology, it has not really changed my outlook from a narrative perspective. And we also see that we just look more broadly across other assets in crypto, they're also in decent spots. So Ethereum, leave it up to you to decide if you still think Ethereum is relevant in crypto. A lot of people are leaving it for dead, but it is in a similar place with its risk. It's actually lower risk than Bitcoin right now in long-term risk, down closer to -1. Same thing with Solana, all the way down here below neutral. And Solana just put in a new all-time high quite recently. I think it was yesterday we put in that new all-time high. So when you look across the market, we're in a bull market, risk has cooled off. That's a good setup. And with Trump coming in, and certainly if one thing has been basically signaled by the launch of these meme coins, it does seem like the regulatory environment is going to be very different over the next 4 years. Much more lax, a lot more room for people to experiment in the crypto space for better or worse. What that might mean is that more money could come in. That one of the big reasons people weren't investing in crypto before was because of the regulatory uncertainty, especially around altcoins, that could have been holding them back. Well, this seems like a pretty clear sign that that's not going to be the case, at least over the next 4 years. So that's the kind of thing that could set up not just expansion for Bitcoin beyond here, but also for altcoins, where you could see basically a new alt season finally show up. That's almost become a meme at this point, alt season, that people keep talking about. It never happens. But that is one thing that this does pretty clearly seem to signal, that regulatory scrutiny is probably not really going to be there. Therefore, these things might have more room to grow. Now, that could end up meaning that the crash is pretty extreme when it ends up happening. If you're basically saying that experimentation and, frankly, potentially crime, you can get away with it, you don't have to worry about it. Well, look what happened last cycle when we had things like Terra Luna blow up spectacularly, FTX blow up horribly, and how low that brought us. We could be setting ourselves up for something like that after some big explosion to the upside. Now, I think up till this point, we haven't really seen as much of basically things growing that seem as volatile or as dangerous as Luna or FTX or something like that. But if we have a few years of basically no scrutiny whatsoever of the space, then opportunistic people will come in there. They will build up Ponzi schemes. They will build up scams that will collapse horribly and could end up ultimately dragging the market down with them. So I think it's important to keep an eye on those things. I don't think we're there yet. And so I think we're still on the optimistic side. We're still on the bullish side. We're still on the upswing. But there will, I think, come a point potentially where we're going to want to pay a lot of attention to that and not get caught up in the Kool-Aid. Basically, once the data flips bearish, we see a lot of people saying it's the super cycle. Things are never going to go back down. People are YOLOing all of their money into just crazy, extreme projects that are offering unrealistic returns that make no sense. That's where the market is getting so frothy and so toppish that, frankly, it's probably time to be very concerned. I don't think we're there yet. That's something that we're going to look at down the road. But at least for now, in the kind of more medium outlook, I do think bullish makes sense. We have more room to work with. We'll then revisit later whether or not there's reason to concern when we're actually at the point where a top seems more plausible. I don't think we're there yet. All right, so obviously all of this is financial advice and just my views. If you have different views, I'd love to hear them in the comments, and you should invest and navigate the market as you see fit. I'm not giving you any advice there. But that's just what I wanted to talk about. A lot has happened. A lot of debate has happened around the launch of these coins. But ultimately, what's going to matter are the data and what they're telling us. And that's what I'm going to continue following, no matter what I personally feel about certain developments in the market. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates from our models and more over there. You can go to our website, claritydigital.io, to see live data from our models and more.